Good evening. Hi, welcome. My name is Steve Ferraro. I'm the project contact. You probably all got my postcards in the mail or talked to you on the phone or emailed back and forth with you. So thank you for coming out tonight. I know it's National Night Out and it was kind of a little scheduling blip, but we'll make the best of it. We actually have some other staff out in some of the other neighborhoods visiting some of the local parties to kind of make sure we cover everybody here tonight. So thank you for your time and coming out. I'll just introduce the project team here real quick, and then Chris, which this is Chris Bunders. He's with WSB and Associates, our design consultant for the project. He's going to give the presentation, and then in the back of the room we have Paul Omi, our Public Works Director, and Shane Murphy, who's our Senior Project Inspector for this project. And then some other staff will be working on the project as well behind the scenes. But Chris, do you want to start with the presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. All right, we'll get started here. I'm going to run through some slides here. Shouldn't take more than 10 or 15 minutes. I'll ask that you guys wait to ask questions till the end, and then obviously you see the boards that we have all set up here, so we can talk more individually at the boards, or we'll have staff around the room so you can answer any questions you guys might have. But this is the 2024 street reconstruction project, city number 2402. So kind of what we're going to do tonight, lay out, introduce the projects, kind of hopefully get some input from you guys, some background information about the neighborhoods that we're going to work on, and try to answer any questions we can. Obviously, Lakeville puts together a pavement management program. This is a part of that pavement management program, and they identify certain roads based on their classification, whether they need to be reconstructed or they just need some utility work, and they put that into their city CIP. So we're going to kind of walk through the areas now. It's a little hard to see the maps, but when you get up, we can look at a little more detailed. This is the first area with J Court, Jaguar Path, Jarl Court, Jacquard Court, Jacquard Path, Jager Path, Jager Court, and Jambo Court. Kafkin Court in this area of the project. And this is the Italy Avenue, Ipava Avenue, and 201st Street area of the map. And then the last area is our 205th Street, all the way down to the cemetery. So kind of as we go through here, the city does a great job of putting together case-by-case individual analyses of each road. They take a look at the road condition, they take a look at the utilities and the maintenance history, and they kind of go from there and they figure out what areas of the city need improvement. As you can see from the maps, it's not one big giant area. They individually look at roads and figure out exactly what makes sense to be cost effective. Oh, sorry. So for this project, we're gonna be doing street reclamation. We're gonna come in and fully remove the pavement, grind it up, solidify that base that we're gonna be rebuilding the road on. And along with that, we're gonna be doing a lot of spot curb and gutter. If there's cracked curb, or as you can see in some of these areas on this picture, the road is just, or the curb and gutter is just kind of wearing away by the actual storm basins. And then on top of that, we're gonna be looking at storm sewer improvements, whether the manholes, the pipes, or anything in between needs to be improved or needs to be replaced. This picture is actually at 205th and Holt Avenue, so you can see that the road is definitely been patched up a little bit and is in need of being replaced. Talking a little more about the storm drainage, we do an individual analysis on every road to identify whether there's additional storm sewer structures that need to be added, if the existing storm sewer structures are actually above or under capacity. That contributes a lot to whether there's water standing on the road or ice buildup in the winter, and all of that deteriorates the road. So the better we can get the water off the road and into the system, the faster and the better and the longer the road will be. Nice, smooth, and much better to drive on. Another aspect of our design is we're looking at water quality. So all the storm sewer basins, or ponds in this case for the city, we look at each individual system. Like over on Jaguar, we look at all the water that's getting to that pond and figuring out if we, one, are treating it beforehand, and two, if once it gets into the pond, if it's building up any sort of like sediment basin that we need to go through and clean out, or just overall improve the basin in general. Along with water quality and storm sewer, obviously the city streets have a lot of sidewalks and trails along them. We have a list here of a couple areas that we're going to identify for trail improvements. Trail improvements both include the actual walking path and also include ADA improvements. So we'll be putting ADA quality ramps on all of these, and these are just a list of the trails. Anywhere there's a sidewalk that has a ADA will have an ADA ramp on it as well. Kind of the evaluation process. So the city looks at, like I said, all the roads and all the utilities within those roads. They go through and televise storm sewer. They send people down the manholes, inspect the manholes for both storm sewer, sanitary sewer. They review all the water main, if it's been maintained well, if it's old. They're gonna go in and, in most cases, replace when they need to replace. Obviously, they wanna do this cost effectively, so they have record of all of the maintenance that's been done, and we'll go back and adjust accordingly. One thing they've started installing to help the life of the water main is installing corrosion protection. That big giant bag in there, in that picture, basically is cathodic protection, and it will help to reduce the corrosion of both the pipes, the bolts, and everything on the water main that naturally flows through the pipe. So we install that everywhere on our water main. If we're gonna open it up, we're gonna put that in there. And then obviously, all of this put together makes it more sense if you do it at the same time. So the city's gonna evaluate pavement, the city's gonna evaluate the utilities, and we're gonna couple that into looking at the life of the roads and figuring out exactly what roads to pick at what times. Special assessments. All of these roads will either be a full depth reclamation or a full reconstruct. So per the 429 process and per the city's assessment policy, the street and storm sewer costs will be assessed at a 40% rate, but it is not per lineal footage of your property. So if you happen to live on a corner, it is just per unit. So each one of these areas will have a different assessment amount for each one, depending on the benefit to the property owners for that road. We have not done that calculation yet. We are just getting into the beginnings of our evaluation and survey for the project. So that will be forthcoming at a later date. Speaking of our schedule, obviously we're here tonight for the first neighborhood meeting. We will be putting together a feasibility report for basically from now until October when we present it to council. We will have a second neighborhood meeting in early November. That is when we will have your assessment numbers. We will have individualized assessments for each areas, and that's when we can present them to you guys, answer any questions you might have about them before the actual public hearing on November 20th. And then once we get done with the feasibility and present it to City Council, we will be preparing the plans and specs for the project. That'll basically take us through the first of the year when we will accept the plans and specs and then go through our online bidding process and opening bids on February 20th. The final assessment hearing will be on April 1st. And then starting as early as April, May next year, we will be constructing this. This will be a one-season construction. So as of right now, we are out. You guys may have seen some of the survey crews out there getting survey done. There's also geotech that will be out there doing cores, doing GPR, and eventually soil borings over the next 3 weeks. So if you see us out there, feel free to give us a call if you have any questions. Otherwise, that is what they're out there doing. They're collecting as much data as we can so that we can fully design this to the best of our abilities. At this time, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we can break up and talk individually at the boards, and that's kind of all I got. I appreciate you guys coming in. Oh yes, there is a QR code both on these slides and on the back screen back there, or on the back schedule board. If you have any questions about the project, you can use that, or you can go onto the city website, and it will have weekly updates or at least monthly updates as we get going into the project design. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that a unit build, like is it taken out of the total number of units that's yours used to divide out what the assessment is, or is that built back to the city?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
If there are parks in the the construction area,
Okay.
is that unit taken out of the number of units, or you divide out the cost, or is that built back to the city?
So if I'm not mistaken, you're asking if the park parcels will be subtracted out of the assessment areas. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Steve, that is a city-owned parcel, so that would that be assessed to the city?
No, I think
That's then removed.
from the assessment.
Cost of that section of the roadway in front of the park, that's what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
the cost to reconstruct that section of roadway is borne by the city, because that's our frontage.
So we live on 205th and Vallejo going to the east.
Okay.
And I noticed that you were talking about like a trail or a sidewalk. Were you planning on doing anything like that on that street, or just repaving and checking the sewers?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, I'll take.
Yeah.
So we're not planning any new sidewalk or trails, but if there's existing sidewalk or trail there, we're planning to address any defects and reconstruct those if they are. So I think you saw the slide that showed on like 201st in Italy, on the north end of Italy, there's a trail that goes to the north and connects to another neighborhood. Our plan was to look at that trail system and see what work that needed and survey that entire trail system to the north and address it at this time.
There was a note to for 205th at the very east end where the cemetery starts. There is a trail crossing there. We plan to update that with ADA ped ramps as well. With ADA ped ramps.
That has to be in the truncated domes.
With the truncated domes.
Metal plates that you see on the ramps.
Well, there's nothing there now.
Right, that's where we're gonna
We're gonna put that.
put that in.
Yeah.
Where it crosses the street.
Correct. Yeah, we're across this 205th.
But it's flush right there.
That's good. That's good for ADA, because then it means everybody can surmount it. So whether you're walking or whether you're on a wheelchair, everybody can access it easier. No, the only thing we would do is we would add tactiles for a warning device. So if you are visually impaired and can't figure out where the road starts and the trail ends, you can physically detect that. So that's part of what the ADA ramp. Yep, yeah, and it's a requirement at any time we update a trail or a sidewalk. Yep, exactly, yeah. Yeah, but no, flat is good for ADA.
I have two questions. One, do you know how many landowners are in this area that's going to be assessed? And then secondly, are there any grants, state or federal, that you're going to be able to secure to help drive down that assessment price?
I believe there's roughly 100 parcels that will be assessed on this particular section of the project. As far as the assessments, it is only 40% of the cost, so the city will bear, and the city bonding will bear the rest of that cost. I don't know of any grants in addition to that.
Yeah, as of right now, there's no grants that would help cover the cost of the street and storm portions of the project. We are looking towards some grants or special funding for water quality structures and that. So before stormwater enters streams or lakes. So we're actively looking into that right now for the project. As of right now, we haven't started that process yet, no. Yeah, we can definitely look into it.
Yeah, I guess to clear one thing up though, it is still 40% of the total cost for the street and the storm project. So even if we did get additional grants to that, that would lower the total cost, but the assessment percentage would still stay the same. Yeah.
I guess I'm familiar with different grants out there, maybe not here, I'm
Okay.
not for sure here, but
Yeah.
I know in other communities, those grants are available, and I would think it'd be to our benefit to go after those grants.
And we typically do apply for grants under the reconstruction projects that we typically, they don't score very well. A lot of those grants that are out there are for new connections or safety enhancements or trail underpasses. There's a regional solicitation that comes out every 2 years that addresses a lot of that. I'm not aware of any federal grants specifically targeting these type of little project areas. A lot of those solicitations, or a lot of those grants are for larger projects, and we have secured funding for those type of projects in the past.
And then none of these roads are part of the state aid routes either, so state aid funding would not be available for these particular roads. Other projects throughout the years definitely did have state aid funding, but this section of roads do not. Absolutely. Yeah, yep, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Are the per unit cost for each project calculated or for all of the projects together?
So the benefit for each individual neighborhood will be calculated per that neighborhood. So if you live in Italy, it'll be per that one. If you live off of 205th, it'll be per that one. So we look at each individual area individually because
it kind of varies. It's usually anywhere from that $2,500 to $5,000 range, depending.
yeah,
This year.
Typically, yes.
typically,
Thank you.
yeah.
That helps a lot to know that.
Yes.
And you assess that over 10 years
Our
or
assessment,
direct payment if we wish to?
Yes, and we have copies of the assessment policy and back and whatnot that kind of explains all that as well, so.
it's a 10 years assessment.
Yeah.
And then
Yes, sir.
does it go by square footage of your property?
Nope, it just goes by individual unit. So if you have a corner lot, it wouldn't be per square footage of your curb. It would just be one unit at a time, one parcel at a time.
Then we can show benefit, and that's
Yep.
how we make that calculation.
Because we have a pretty big property line.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
To me, has a half of what we have.
Yep. Nope, it'll still be assessed the same. So if you have a half acre stretch and the next person just has a driveway, it's still by unit. So it would be the same number.
How do you assess on a collector road? 20 bucks. How do you assess the benefit to a specific property on a collector road? Where that road is primarily being used and deteriorated by others that are driving on it, not those that are living in that special section.
Right. I can try to answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So collector roads are assessed a little bit differently. So we take the residential equivalency is what we call it. So we look at what the improvements are needed for that road, basically if it was a residential street. And then we subtract off the bigger pavement sections, any other additional oversizing necessary for that collector roadway. So the city pays for the oversizing of the road and anything associated with the collector portion of the road, and then we basically do that calculation to get it back down to the residential equivalents. None of these streets are on a collector road in the 2024 project, so we don't have to do that calculation. But
Jaguar is considered a collector road.
it's not on our MSA route though, I think, so it's still a more or less a residential road.
It's not trying to make it a cul-de-sac, but it's always a collector road.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that.
Can that be reevaluated?
Yeah, we can take a look at that. Sure.
Back to the parks.
Yeah.
So there's a swamp, there's a big park, there's another piece of property. Who pays for those 3 parcels? The city? Or like, if there's 100 properties, are there 97 then that gets spread across the whole bill and the city doesn't pay for those 3?
No, the city would pay for the frontage on the properties that it fronts.
That they own, yeah.
Yeah, that they own.
Yeah, so the unit would still be included in the assessment. So if, it would still be 100, but the city would bear the cost of that portion.
If you want, we can break up into smaller groups and look at individualized neighborhoods that are specific to where y'all folks
Right.
are.
Yeah.
So in the case of 201st Street, where the city is basically, all of Antlers Park is along that one side, do they pay 1 unit for the entire frontage on 201st from Ipava all the way down to Italy? Or do they pay multiple units based on the fact that that would be multiple units of homes if it was the case?
That I'm not sure off the top of my head right now. We haven't started the assessment policy. So, or started the assessment practice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's gonna affect everybody else in the neighborhood share, if that's counted as 1.
Yep.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, yeah. We can definitely take that into account and take a look at that. Right now, as it's shown on the maps, it is shown as 1.
Absolutely. That's a good point. It's one big chunk.
That is,
That's a big chunk that gets to count as a 1.
That's a very good point, yeah.
Yep.
Will you actually look at it, or are we gonna come back in November and the drawings look the same?
No.
yeah, we'll absolutely look at it. Yep.
Yeah. You guys make notes of all this stuff? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So if
Yeah.
we want to break up now, we can get Post-its. If you guys have questions that you would like physically want to put it on the boards, you can do that. Otherwise, we have comment cards in the back that you guys can put things into there, and we will go through all those as well.
The scope of the project, but when do you look at the benefit of ready-mix concrete versus this asphalt? Knowing that asphalt life is much shorter and it's just gonna create more work and more burden on us over the long haul as taxpayers when you go to replace it. So what, do you look at that with this kind of a project?
In most cases, the cost of concrete is extremely higher versus asphalt. So over the life of the project or over the life of the road, there may be less additional maintenance early on, but over the life of concrete, I mean, yes, it will on average last longer for a residential road than pavement, but the cost over the life of the project it's upfront, it's a lot more. So that would be more that would be assessed versus putting back what you have now.
And
Investment in concrete for roadways in the city of Lakeville at any place, is there?
I think there is.
think so.
Paul, do you know of any concrete streets?
There isn't, and
No.
most communities in the metro area here too do not use concrete.
Yeah,
for
and I mean-
residential streets, just because of the cost associated with it, and there's been studies that have been done that it is
Yeah.
over the life cycle of concrete versus bituminous, you're better off just going with bituminous. There's not as many batch plants in the metro area here as there are, say, in like Iowa and other states where you see more concrete roads.
Yep.
So, and then, so that's
Not to mention
that's
too,
gonna be the
yeah.
driver too. Plus, the maintenance of the concrete, our crews are not set up to deal with concrete pavements. So every once in a while, like utilities have to get dug up or reevaluated, or small utilities have to go through the street. So there has to be some potholes there. So it's a lot harder to deal with those type of situations than just bituminous pavement.
All right, yeah. Well, thank you for the questions. We're gonna break up and answer anything else you got. Appreciate that.
Thanks.